Hello, amazing parents and caretakers, and welcome to the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. I'm your family empowerment coach, Celia Kibler. I'm a mom of a blended family of 5 kids. I'm a grandma of 9 kids, an author, a teacher, a speaker, and a consultant with over 40 years of training and real-life parenting experience. I'm here to offer you practical, doable tips, strategies, and techniques that will pump up your parenting skills and create peace, love, and laughter throughout your family. In addition, I'll be interviewing some great humans that are on a mission to make your life a better, happier, and healthier life. So let's not waste any time and get started with the next episode of the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. Thanks for listening. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. Hey, moms out there, we are talking about you today because how many of you just get lost in mom land? I mean, I remember thinking when my kids were little, I would go over to my parents' house and they'd be like, oh, all excited to see the kids. And I'd be like, hello, I'm your child and I'm your mother. And I made these children, and it seems like, you go to school and you're Tommy's mother or you're Harper's mom, or like you lose the identity. You just become that person's mother. So today I have a special guest on today, Sarah Moore, and we are going to talk about reclaiming yourself, finding the you in all of this stuff, in all of this family life. Let's find you and put a little priority on you so that you don't feel like the whole world's running around in circles and you're kind of being sucked down the middle. So Sarah, who is the founder of More Soul Sessions, Moore, her last name, at moresoulsessions.com. Welcome to the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Oh, I'm excited to have you. And Sarah, if you would you just give an introduction to yourself and let us know your situation and how you became so passionate about helping women?
So I'm a women's leadership coach, and I believe that I got to this work, was led divinely to this work because I desperately wanted to know how to lead and love myself. As a young woman, I'm now in my early 40s, so I consider myself still pretty young, but as a woman in my teens, 20s, even into my 30s, I felt quite lost often. I had lots of emotions. I didn't know how to channel them or use them. I had a history of having a friend and then losing a friend, literally meaning they didn't want to be my friend anymore. I mean, time and time and time again. I also was bullied. And so on the outside, I was doing a lot of interesting, exciting things. I was going off to university and studying languages, something I loved. I was traveling a lot with my family all over the world. I was moving to South America when I was 20. When I was 22, I booked a one-way ticket to the US on a whim and decided this is the path I'm going to take. And I looked confident. I looked ballsy. And I was. It's just that on the inside, I didn't feel that way. I often felt like I was doing something, but I didn't feel quite in my own skin. I didn't feel comfortable with who I was. And so I think I'm, to this day, closing that gap of what does it look like to feel good, not just look good. One of my favorite questions is, what do I think versus living in the space of what will they think? And so I believe I'm an effective coach because I'm doing the work alongside of my clients. I'm passionate about learning about who am I, what do I want, what matters to me, what are my own limitations and how do I not be in denial about those or scared of those so I act or behave in ways that are inconsistent with who I am? Or should I say, so I don't act in ways that are inconsistent with who I want to be? And, and so I've been on this journey as a coach for the last 14 years. And I think it even started before that. But I do know, as hard as the work can be sometimes, I think this is the most important work of getting to know who we are intimately and having a real relationship with ourselves and not just being mum, wife, partner, sister, employee, business owner. And it's tough, it's tough and it's also incredibly rewarding. So I know there's no place I'd rather be, even on the days where I think, what on earth is this? I've just peeled another layer of the onion back on myself and it doesn't feel good at all.
Yeah, I love all that. And it's so important to really be genuine to ourselves and not just play a role. We often just go through life year after year after year, and we're being what somebody else wants us to be. And there are people that do it their whole lives and sadly come close to the end of their lives and like feel like, I was playing make pretend. I was just being an actress or an actor and, in this role of life. And I wasn't being genuine to myself because I was so concerned about what other people think and how this person thought I should take this path. But all along, you didn't want to take it. So, Sarah, let me ask you first off, would you tell everyone about your son, because I know you have a son, and how your work that you do with other moms and that you claim you also do on yourself, which we all need to do our own self-examination and improvement and, get to where we want to be. How does that affect the way you parent your child?
Oh, it's a great question. It's firstly, I'll say it's messy. It changes every day. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Becky Kennedy. She's a parenting expert. Yeah.
Yes.
I remember once she was being interviewed and she said, I follow my own advice about 30% of the time. And I thought, ooh, yes, that's how I know I can trust you. I love that answer. I really believe that my relationship with myself is more important and comes before my role as a mother to Austin. He's 8, about to be 9. And the other day, I actually asked him, who's the most important relationship in your life? And he said, the one I have with myself. And I turned around
What
and
wisdom!
right. And I went, yes, it's working. Like felt like I scored real mum points there. And so I think my ability to say no is something I remark at a lot and I feel really good about. I know I want to say yes. I don't want to be a parent who's constantly saying no to everything. That doesn't feel good. What I mean here is I'm able to know my own boundaries, right? I'm able to say, actually, buddy, I need a break. Hey, I'd love to do this, not that. And sometimes I'll explain why, and sometimes I won't. And I watch in return, he models the same thing back. He'll say, actually, Mum, I don't want to do that. I'm willing to do it an hour from now. Right now, I'd like to be alone. I often say I'd like to be alone. I'd like to go and have some quiet time. Or if we're arguing or bickering, being able to say, I need to take a break because I'm not at my best and I'm lost in this conversation and I'm going to remove myself, right? And so that's all back to what do I think? What do I think about how I show up? What am I even thinking about what's true in this moment? Because right now, I've lost all perspective and I'm just focused on being right and winning. And I know intrinsically, because I've done enough of this work, that something feels off. I'm off. The problem isn't you, the problem is me, right? I need to recenter this person to know where to go from here. And I don't always know that. I need to step away. I need to be working on myself. I need to be interested in myself. And I really believe that we'll see. Austin's still only 8, but it sets him up for success to know that I'm a person outside of being your parent. Therefore, you can also be a person outside of being whatever that
Right.
label is. And I'm even catching myself in this moment because I'm a whole person. Parenting, a parent is part of my
Part of
identity.
you.
So it's not necessarily outside of, that might not be best said. It's just that I'm not just that. I'm so much more. And me pursuing my own life, writing a book, having this business. My husband and I bought a house that we renovated and we've turned it into an Airbnb business. And Austin getting to see all of those things, all of that creativity and be exposed to the independent thought, I think is so meaningful for what he'll choose to pursue in his own life.
I love that. I love that. And it's so important that we role model the type of parent, the type of person we want our children to be. Always say, often say, we're raising adults, not children. They're already children. It's our job to raise a confident, self-reliant, compassionate, kind, wonderful, loving, whatever adjective you'd like to put in front of adult. And we have to be that person. And when a child understands that you are your individual self as well as your participation in the relationship, in the family, that is so important to learn in all your relationships. All your relationships are made up of individual people, whether it's you and your child, you and your partner, you and someone at work. You're still individual people in a relationship. And that relationship should not be the thing that tells you how to behave, how to act. Your values, your commitment, your integrity, your personal responsibility, that should tell you how to behave and to participate in the relationship. And knowing that someone is an individual also makes the relationship stronger because then you're also aware of each other's perspectives, which is so important. You're not just like, well, you have to think like I think. No, why does someone have to think like you? It's impossible for them to think like you think. And the more you recognize that, whether it's between you and a partner or you and your child, the stronger that relationship becomes.
Totally. I love and respect myself too much to get lost in just being a parent. Right? That doesn't do it for me. Just like my relationship with my husband is actually more important than my parenting, right? My relationship with myself first, my relationship with him, because we are the foundation of this family. Then parenting. And it's this wonderful, wild adventure, incredibly humbling being a parent. And there is so much else in the world that I'm interested in. This is just a beautiful piece. And so I think that's the work I'm doing with women, whether they're a parent or not, a business owner or not, just centering yourself in your world. I like to flip the idea of what does it mean to be self-centered, right? It has such a negative connotation, yet there's really nothing more beautiful. Just like this idea of being full of ourselves. Oh, don't be too full of yourselves. Don't be too much. You know, no. A woman who knows and owns her whole story is the most beautiful thing you're ever going to see because she's in her power. So I just think that journey of reminding women, you used the phrase in the introduction about, you matter. You matter. I'm that person who's here to remind you, you matter. Now let's look at what matters to you, what's
Right.
working and what isn't, and let's flesh out that story further.
And so much of it is even, and stems from our childhood. Like the importance of your relationship with the other parent is so important to your child because that's their normal. Whoever they're living with, whatever that relationship is, if it's cooperative and respectful and it's, improving and understanding each other and not necessarily agreeing, but seeing where each other's coming from, modeling that kind of behavior to a child helps them when they enter into relationships with siblings, with cousins, with friends, with teachers, with other adults, with future love interests. It shows them how they need to be respectful of another person and how they need to behave in a two-way relationship or more than two-way. Understanding and recognizing that individual's needs for themselves as well as in this situation that you're in. And it's so important that parents realize this, that their relationship with the partner, their other parent, is so important. It is so important to that child. And it's teaching that child so much more than even you just parenting them. That
Oh,
example you're giving, just like you say, your son's already recognizing how important his feelings are, how important his wants and needs are. They're not just, oh, whatever mom wants. I have a say in this too.
yeah. Oh my gosh, when I'm off with my husband, Preston, massively impacts so many things. It doesn't mean I have to be in agreement with him. It doesn't mean that I can't tolerate the uncertainty of there being some sort of rift between us. That's going to happen. That's part of a relationship. In fact, that's what we're modeling all of the time is how can I tolerate this uncertainty in so many contexts? And so that for me is emotional regulation and making sure that that foundation with myself and then with my husband is shored up. It makes everything go so much more smoothly in this very uncertain ride of parenting, where I'm often surprised at how quickly I run out of tools. I want to raise a son who has opinions, who has his own ideas, who is willing to voice them. And then I'm often thinking, wait a second, yes, you're entitled to those, but you're also not running the show, right? And so
Right.
that's a hard blend. And then my husband and I have different ideas about how we manage that, how we show up to that, because we've both got our own triggers, which is back to our own relationship with ourselves and being able to work through that. But gosh, like my husband and I, we have most Wednesdays an hour that we spend together during the middle of the day. We're flexible enough that we can do that. We do it in a neutral place. We go to a Starbucks, and so if we're talking about anything challenging, there's already
You're in public.
yeah, exactly. There's a certain amount of regulation we got to bring because I can't storm out the door or yell at you. And we do a number of things. We talk about our week and our life. We have read actually sometimes literally a parenting article or a book or a podcast, or we're doing some stuff around our own money, right? We're really looking for what does financial serenity in this season of our life look like now? How can we get better at that? And so we're reading and we're talking about things and we're just growing together. We're creating that emotional connection that makes our home feel safe and welcoming, and we're not walking on eggshells around each other. And when something's uncomfortable, it's okay. It can just be uncomfortable because we've got to model that too. There's just more of a settled feeling in ourselves. And that's what we're aiming for, right? Whether
Right.
it's a relationship with a family member, a relationship with an employee at work, a relationship with our boss. I mean, we're humans born to be in connection with one another. And so navigating the nuances of relationship are really, I think, where the rubber meets the road in terms of our ability to thrive and find purpose and a certain peace and contentment in our lives. And so that's what I'm most interested in, practicing it, practicing messing up, falling short, apologizing about all of the time. And I like that. I
Yeah.
like that because I feel mostly in integrity with who I am.
And that's
And
so important.
it's
And so important to teach.
so, yeah, yeah. It's I have the skills to right the wrong. I have the skills to show up for myself. And at the end of the day, I actually like who I was, even when it was messy.
Which is great. It's great to reflect on your day. And also the teaching that mistakes are simply mistakes.
Yeah.
Things that don't work out are simply things that just didn't work out, and let's reflect on them. And we're teaching our kids to reflect on them as well and not take it as the end of the world. Oh, I wanted to do this and this didn't work out. And they like throw a fit. They learn that was just another stepping stone. Just let's check out what happened. Let's see where you wanted it to be. Didn't work out. So now how can we do another path to get to where we want to be? And that's all a mistake is. That's all a failure is. It's a way of reflecting on what
And,
I did and what I can do.
and that would be a great example of how do I tolerate the discomfort, the uncertainty of that. Ugh, right? And one question I ask Austin when I pick him up from school almost every day is, what did you fail at today?
So good question.
Right? And then it gets me going, oh, I don't really like to fail either. Right? And so, oh, let me name what I failed at today. It could be something tiny, it could be something much bigger. And it normalizes failure, right?
Correct.
Right? We don't get creativity without failure. That's the only way we get there. And so just normalizes these things that we're often trying to avoid. If we just have the skills to face them and be in that discomfort, we can normalize them.
Right. Right. And I always, when I'm talking about failure, I always ask parents, like, what's the opposite of success? And everybody hands down says failure.
Mhm.
And the truth is it's not the opposite. There is no success without failure. So it can't be the opposite. It's part of success. The opposite of success is giving up. You try to do something, you try to do something, you give up and you're like, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
That is the opposite of success. But failure, mistakes, those are just, stepping stones on the road to success, because success doesn't happen without learning from things that went wrong.
That's so well said, Celia. I'm going to use that
Thank
moving
you.
forward. I
Feel
like
free.
it.
Feel free to use it. Because we all think that. And the shame of it is because we think that, we're probably even taught it in school when we're learning about opposites, you know. But because we think that, then it shows us that failure is a horrible thing. Failure is the end of the world. We did not succeed. We are horrible people, and it says so much more to our inner mind and our subconscious and our beliefs when we think that, oh my gosh, I failed. I tried. I failed. I'm terrible. And then you beat yourself up over it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it speaks to, I don't want to raise a kid to be happy. I want to raise a kid to be resilient, right? I want to raise a kid who's aiming not so much, happiness is at the top of the emotional scale with joy and freedom and empowerment. I want him to feel happy in moments. I want him to be able to access happiness. I really want him to be a little further down the scale at peace and contentment. And I define that as nothing needs to change right now in order for me to feel okay. I just couldn't say it enough. That's tolerating the discomfort, right? There might be things that are outside of our control that we want to change and we can't. But how can I feel okay with what is because I have a sense of my own power. I know what I can control and I can let go of the rest rather than trying to frantically change things that I'm never going to be able to, that only cause me more pain. And yeah, so I don't know, life is, I think, really rooted in being able to understand our emotional range and live into it. And many of us are just living into a few emotions that we know well and repeating that cycle, and everything outside of it becomes scary.
Right. Right. And I when I talk about emotions, I actually talk about the fact that emotions are merely emotions. They're
Yeah.
not good. Like they'll go anger. Anger is a bad emotion. It's not a bad emotion. It's an emotion.
That's
We
right.
have a slew of them. What, if you want to categorize what's great and what's not so great, is the way we react to the emotion. How do we respond to it? That emotional intelligence
Yeah.
that we need to learn along the path of life because we're not born with it. And when you said about the uh, now I forgot what you said. Okay, nix that. What was that? I went into the emotion thing and I forgot what I was going to say. That's all right. But no, that's something else. Hold on. Okay. Czar, when you're editing this, just edit out this section. She'll hear it. She'll edit it out.
Was it about the emotional scale?
Now, what else were you saying?
Mm. Peace and contentment.
Oh, bing, bing, bing. Okay. So, the other thing I want to address is about how you said you don't necessarily raise your child to be happy all the time. Because so many parents are like, well, of course, I want my child to be happy. And that is a very general but negative approach to raising a child. Because in reality, we always want our kids to be happy. I have 5 kids, I have 9 grandkids. I want them all to be happy and live happy, wonderful lives. But the truth is, you can't be happy all the time. Life serves up disappointments. Things don't go your way. And if you do not help your child understand how to deal with things that don't go their way, things that are disappointing, you're actually doing them a very big disservice. And you're going to be raising a very unhappy adult. So, all this push towards happy, 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 happy is going to lead them into a world of unhappiness.
Totally agree. I'm thinking a whole bunch of things. One is, I know we're talking about our children, and I keep thinking about, I mean, you could just take children out of this sentence and
Yeah,
just say I,
personal.
right? Like
Absolutely.
my own inner child, that little girl in me who's still wanting her needs met, who's still living 30 years in the past when it's actually today and that thing happened forever ago. I'm not happy all of the time. I'm not supposed to be, right? I'm
Right.
supposed to live into all of these emotions. And you're right. If we can learn to take the charge out of them and just have them be feelings, life becomes a lot more interesting because now all of a sudden there are all of these pockets and corners and conversations and people that we can tolerate. And I think you and I are saying the same thing. One of my favorite phrases is feelings aren't facts, right?
That's great. Yes.
I need to feel all of my feelings. I'm supposed to, and I want to feel the appropriate feelings in the appropriate moments. That's something I'm often coaching women around. Like, great that you feel sadness. Great that you feel angry. That seems appropriate in this situation. Feel that. What does it feel like in your body so you can learn to identify it when it comes up? Sit with it, let it pass, and then you start to move up the scale into something that you can use and is a little bit more productive, perhaps, because we don't want to stay in anger for a long period of time. So I need my feelings, but they're not necessarily facts.
Right.
They're just an emotional response. I don't control them. Oftentimes they're just coming up. and I don't want to act out of my feelings. That's why this work of self-reflection, whether it's done by yourself, with a coach, with a mentor, with a therapist, ideally a combination of the two, is building muscle memory to be able to identify them, sit with them, let them pass, so that then you can make a decision from a regulated place. Just like when I say to Austin, up, I need to go. I've lost myself in this conversation. I don't know what's true. That's what that is,
Right. Right.
right? It's removing myself to come back to a relatively neutral place, however long that might take, figuring out how I do that, what works for me. That's time, years, an investment really well spent, so that then I can come back and I can actually address the issue, and I'm not just talking sideways out of my mouth and making it worse.
Exactly. I just made a reel about that because parents will say, because I'm all about telling parents and the ones that I don't coach that aren't parents, that you have to be in control because I'm all about not yelling. My whole shtick is I want everybody to stop yelling at each other, yelling at kids, all of that screaming, all that aggression. Hi, this is Celia, your host and family and relationship empowerment coach, and mom and grandma, here to take a break from this podcast to give you a special opportunity. As parents, we all have those moments. The pressure builds up, the noise gets too much, and before we know it, we're raising our voices higher than we ever intended. But what if there was a better way? Introducing 21 Days to Stop Yelling at Your Kids, a revolutionary program designed to help you communicate with your children without yelling. Imagine a home filled with understanding and respect, where your words have impact without the need to raise your voice. Created through my over 40 years of experience, this course offers you practical, easy to implement strategies that work in real life. You'll learn through interactive lessons, engaging exercises, and a supportive community. No judgments, just guidance. Because being a parent doesn't have to mean you're perfect. It's about growing and it's about becoming intentional. In just 21 days, life will be calmer and more harmonious. What if you don't get the course? Where will you be in 21 days? Still feeling like a bad parent? I encourage you to join the millions of parents that I have helped who have found a new path to communication and connection. Visit quityelling.com to enroll in the 21 Days to Stop Yelling course today. And for our podcast listeners, use the code podcast for a 60% discount. Quityelling.com, because love speaks so much louder than yelling. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side. But you have to be in control of that. You're not in control of the other person. You have to be in control of that. And so they'll be like, well, if I walk away, then they think I'm ignoring them. I'm like, sit down. Give each other permission. You know what, guys? If we're ever talking, if we're ever in a situation, if we're ever doing anything and you feel yourself getting angry, walk away. We all have permission to walk away. We'll come back and discuss it when we're calmer. I have an acronym that I teach families and individuals called PEPA. And it's like Peppa Pig, but it has nothing to do with a pig. So it's PEPA. So there's an extra P in Peppa Pig. Throw that away. That's for the pig. We're not doing anything with pigs. But the acronym is pause, evaluate, plan, and act. And it relates to anything. So anything that is kind of getting you irritable or you're feeling a little like, you're ready to emotionally react and not proactively react, pause. And if you think of Peppa, you've already paused. That thought in your brain, Peppa, you just broke that cycle. So you've already paused. Now, like, evaluate what you were saying before. Look at the situation, come back so you can actually approach it productively, constructively, not destructively, and evaluate it, plan what you want to say, what you want to do, depending on what it is, and then do it. And if everybody gives themselves permission and each other permission to just pause instead of letting these situations escalate out of control, we can not only create a more cooperative environment, but you're also teaching whoever is watching you how to regulate that feeling of irritability or disappointment or whatever is causing you to feel escalated in your emotions.
It's brilliant. It's the work of a lifetime, right? I'm thinking that person who thinks, oh, I'm not going to walk away because then they think they've got one over on me.
Right.
That's a coaching moment, right? Like, what is it in me that thinks if I walk away, it means this? Where did that come up from? Come up? Where did that come from? Does that even work for me? Right? Is
Right.
that something I want to be true? If not, what do I want to be true? Okay, now how do I start to develop the skills to move towards that new truth? Right? I mean, that's it. That's the work in motion right there. God, and everything is so much better with a pause.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
And it's, I always reflect on, did you watch I don't know what it was. Was it the Oscars, the Academy Award, where Chris Rock and Will Smith conflicted?
yes.
So this was like, I couldn't have paid and hired actors to do a better example of a reaction than what they demonstrated. Will Smith came up there, smacked him, screaming, yelling, and Chris Rock could have returned the smack. He could have returned the punch. How many people say, if somebody hits you, hit him back?
Yeah.
But he kept his composure. He made light of the situation, and the show must go on. And Will Smith is still screaming and yelling as he walked away.
Yeah.
You have to be in integrity, again, integrity, my favorite word,
Mm.
with yourself. If a bully comes up to your child and punches them, and your child didn't like to be punched, do not teach your child to punch back. That, and now I know many people are going to be like, oh yeah, oh okay, so they're just going to beat the crap out of them. Not so. A bully doesn't want someone to stand up to them. A bully wants you to punch back so that they now have gained power over you. You're doing something you don't want to do. Don't give your power away.
Yeah. I experienced this with Austin, my son. Austin and Preston. Even I get them confused because of the stun at the
They're
end.
very rhymy.
Very rhyming. Austin, I'll find myself looking up and I'm thinking, how on earth did I get myself into this discussion? And it's this idea that I think that just because I got an invite to an argument, that I need to RSVP.
I
And
love that. Exactly.
I just don't. I'm finding I'm someone who loves to talk. I want to be heard. I've got a lot to say. And so I can almost end up defending myself, not just with my 8-year-old, but with people in my life. And I'm practicing just being silent. That having the humility to just be silent and just let them say the things they want to say and not take them on, not participate, not assign meaning to them. We're meaning making machines And I'm really learning to not assign so much meaning to things. Like, just because you said that to me and I didn't like it, well, now I should be offended.
Right?
So now I'm
How many people do that? Well,
what
they did this, so I did this. What did you like when they did
um,
that? No. So why are
yeah,
you doing that?
that's right. And yeah, that's right. Like often my energy is matching that of theirs. So now we're both in the same boat. It's not that
Exactly.
but I've forgotten that because I'm just so busy pointing my finger at you because I didn't like what you said. But but that's pride, that's self-righteousness. And when I'm really honest in a quiet moment and I come back to what do I think, meaning who do I want to be? How do I want to behave?
Bingo.
Does this bring me peace? No, then maybe I can look at saying nothing and it doesn't feel good. It's actually starting to feel really good, which is a great example of my progress and being able to measure it. But being able to try something different and realize that just because you're in that space, I don't have to jump in the ring with you is very freeing for me in this season of life.
Yeah, and I just love everything you said there. And it's so important because, I'm always helping parents not yell, not emotionally react. And when you talk to parents that do, they always feel guilty about it. People
Mm.
that hit people, people that physically or mentally abuse other people, there's always an apology. I'm so sorry. They always feel badly about it, but they don't take on how can I stop doing what I'm feeling so badly about that I am doing. And that's where all the coaching comes in. That's where it's like, well, let's find out other ways that you can approach that situation. Yeah, I would say I teach parents how to raise respectful children without the need to yell. Why? Because you don't need to yell. You're yelling because of a lack in you, lack of tools, lack of strategies, lack of a parenting framework, which is what I help parents with. But it's like if you are constantly apologizing for what you're doing or what you're doing to yourself, like you work with so much, you have to come to a point at some point of time and say, this has to be fixed. Apologizing over and over again is not creating a better situation for me because you do matter. Your guilt matters.
It's uncomfortable to sit with the guilt. It's easier to just keep yelling, to just keep pointing the finger, to just keep apologizing and swallowing the guilt than it is to sit with the feeling that it creates in us. That's why people feel so stuck or don't make a change. I know
Absolutely.
that. I know that. I mean, feelings can be tough. And the more we become willing, the easier it can be because we know the freedom that lives on the other side of taking responsibility for ourselves. I mean,
Absolutely.
I just think this work ought to be foundational. We're all walking around with all of these feelings, yet there's no formal teaching, shepherding of how to be an emotional creature and leverage that for our best interests.
Yeah. And that's how it turns into a generational cycle of dysfunction
So
because you get that generation that doesn't know how to deal with these things and it leads into the next generation because they didn't learn anything from the past generation of how to deal with these things. And that's why therapy, coaching, all of this is like a multi-billion-dollar industry because everybody's recovering from their childhood. What if we could actually create childhoods that created adults that didn't have to recover?
mm,
Wouldn't that be wonderful? That's what I
oh,
do. That's my work.
it's a
But
beautiful mission.
it's it is so important that what you said is key, that you take responsibility for your own behavior. Chris Rock could have smacked Will Smith back, but that was not what he was going to do.
Mm.
For whatever reason, maybe it was just the show must go on, but for whatever reason, he stopped it there.
Mm.
And everybody can do that if they learn to live in integrity with their own values and beliefs and goals.
Mm. I really appreciate your example. I think I'd only focused on Will Smith slapping as opposed to Chris Rock deciding not to slap back, whatever the reason was, right?
Right.
And I can that was such a moment in our culture that as you're saying it to me, I can see myself going, oh, wait, Chris didn't slap back. Let and have that be a way to help me pause, to help me stop and go, oh, I'm feeling a little off track here. Right. And also what I'm looking for and I'm teaching constantly is I don't need to for that to be a big bump. I don't need to be way off the track. Sometimes I am, that's just life. But I'm aiming for it to feel like a little pebble and go, oh, didn't like that. Okay, great. And I can quite easily right the train, right the ship, right? So I'm not experiencing these big highs and lows. And so there's a phrase I sometimes use. I'm wondering if I'm forgetting it because it's not coming right to my mind. But something along the lines of, I want to minimize the amount of pain it takes for me to be willing to make a change,
I
right?
love that.
I've been in so many situations where I've had to get really, really in pain, physically, emotionally, in order to go, oh, this isn't working for me anymore. And I think that's the process with my clients, and it's definitely the one with myself. How can we work to minimize that, minimize that, minimize that? So it just becomes a little boop, and you go, oh, wait a second, I'm off.
Right.
And
And
then
you
it's,
recognize it
yeah, and
and
you've
you
got.
reflect on it and you do something about it.
And as you said, like for parenting, like you've got some tools, you've got a framework. You understand the mechanism of what it feels like, why you're off, and how you can get, back
Back
into
on track.
alignment. Yeah. I
Right.
think it's really
It's
powerful.
so true and it's so important. It's even like you were talking about these uncomfortable conversations with kids. There's a lot of uncomfortable conversations that have to be had with your children.
Mm.
And if you don't have them, someone else will. If it's so uncomfortable, I don't want to talk about sex. I don't want to talk about drugs. I don't want to talk about the internet. I don't want to talk about sexting. I don't want to talk about human trafficking. It was Human Trafficking Awareness Month last month, you know, and how many people sat around and really were aware and talked about it. You know, I don't want to do it. It's too hard.
Mm.
Except that if you don't, Google will or someone else will that
Mm.
you don't necessarily that doesn't necessarily share your own values and your
Mm.
own beliefs.
Yeah.
And so getting uncomfortable is not just important, it's like a crazy wild life lesson because that's where we really grow beyond the uncomfortable.
Yeah. This is reminding me of something that happened yesterday. So Austin loves to BMX race. He's always loved to scooter and BMX, and now he's actually started BMX racing. And we've been doing it about a month. And we went to a race yesterday, and it was about an hour away, and we stopped at a rest stop because he wanted to go to the bathroom. And he was in there a little while, and my husband decided, well, maybe I'll just go to the restroom too. And he went in and he goes, my husband sort of role played an adult trying to like talk to him or say, hey, little boy. So he walks into the restroom, he goes, hey, little boy, you want to come with me? I got some candy. And we talked about human trafficking with
Good.
Austin previously, right? And then and he immediately goes, because Austin was in a stall, so he couldn't see Preston.
Right.
And he immediately goes, Dad, what are you doing? Right? And but my husband kind of continued just a little bit. And then in the car, we used it as a moment like, okay, like what would you actually do? What would you actually say? And to your point, precisely, I sort of said, "Oh, do you think that was a bit much?" I mean, and he said, "Sarah, if something like this was to happen, I don't want it to be the first time
Right.
that Austin has some exposure to it. I want him to have a little bit of perception, not to scare him, saying, most people aren't going to do this, right? Most people are going to look out for your best interest, but I want to prepare him. I want him to know, and I want it to come from us, the people that he trusts and that we know we're values aligned in how we want him to deal with this."
Absolutely. It's
Yeah, so
it's
like,
so important.
yeah.
And it's how you teach children to reach for what they already know. If
Mm,
something is happening for the first time and they have no idea and they haven't talked about it and they're not aware of it, you don't know how they're going to react.
yeah.
And I always talk about how I think stranger danger is so wrong. It like drives me crazy that it's such a concept that kids automatically know because it just makes them afraid of all strangers.
Yeah.
And the truth is, most of the people they meet in a day is a stranger and a good stranger,
Yeah.
not a bad. And the other truth is, most people that abduct and hurt kids are people they know, not strangers. So it goes against everything. And what should be happening is in these discussions that you're having with your children that you're also addressing, just like you do when you coach women or men or anything like that, you're addressing the mindfulness. How does it feel when you get into a situation that doesn't feel right?
Mm.
How is your body telling you it's not right? That's what you want to make kids aware of.
Oh, I love that. I mean, and that's the thing I believe in and teach, and I'm actually talking to him about probably the most. But to incorporate it in those scenarios, oh, yes. Okay, I'm going to do that.
Okay, good. Because that's, you know, if it was one of your clients, you would be saying that. What's your
Mm,
body telling you? Why are you feeling this way? Why are you thinking of something that happened when you were 10 years old and it's still affecting you? Why is that? And you dive into their thoughts and their feelings and their what is going on in their body, their senses, their sensory feedback that they're getting from their heart, their stomach, wherever. They have goosebumps. Their heart, their head hurts. There's all kinds of warning signs and feelings that we get when things aren't right. And
yeah.
it is important to just talk to your child about it. And in the same light, tell them how you feel when I've been in a situation where I didn't feel right. And this is, what made me realize that was, what I was feeling. This is what I thought about. And it's so important. It's so important. And gosh, Sarah, I think you and I could talk forever about this.
I
I
agree.
so appreciate what you do and the work you do. Again, at moresoulsessions.com. More is Moore, soul, Soul, sessions, SESSIONS.com. That's where you're going to find Sarah. And reach out if you're feeling stuck or you're even just feeling, you know what, I like can't get past this. I can't get past this. I don't know why I feel this way. So often we get feelings and we're like, why do you mention it before? Why do I feel this way? Why do I get so emotionally, you know, uh, stressed out when this seems like such a little thing, but it evidently isn't. Where's it coming from? You have to learn. You have to know, and then you will live a more intentional life once you do. So, Sarah, is there one more thing? I know we've talked about so many things, but can you think of one more thing you would advise our listeners to help them be better committed to themselves, their needs, their feelings, and understand that they matter too.
One of my favorite quotes is a Marianne Williamson quote, and it says, "Our greatest fears aren't our inadequacies. Our greatest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure." And I think that feels like a full circle moment to the beginning of this conversation that you matter. You have this power that you get to wield, and it's extraordinary and it's interesting and it can be really scary. And taking the time to realize, to even know that going after what matters to you, pursuing you, is scary, much more scary than living in our fears. So if you're feeling any doubt about it, you're on course, you're on track. It's supposed to feel that way. And that's why it's so rewarding. And so I would just encourage you to sit with that quote, see if it feels true for you, see if that normalizes your experience of holding back, of playing a little small in your own life. And then accompany it with something self-reflective. Start a journaling practice. Hire somebody in your life to talk through these things with. Start doing some meditation. Move your body. You know, when we move our body, we literally move our emotional state because our emotions live in the cells of our body. They're not just up here in our brain. And so any combination of personal practice can start to shift what's possible for you when done on a consistent basis over time.
Amen. Love that. And love that quote. It hangs on my wall. And one little part of that quote is when you shine your light, you give permission for others to shine theirs. And in the world of parenting, in the world of relationships, in business world, everything, when you realize that you have the power to be more, to help someone, to add to a situation positively, to do anything you dream of doing and you actually take action to do it, you give permission for the next person to do it.
I'm so glad you mentioned that part. I talk about this when I run my live events with women. This is so much bigger than you, right? For the woman who doesn't know it's possible, just because you're willing, whether you achieve the thing you set out to do or not, it's creating a ripple effect. And we don't always know what that is. We don't get to see it, but we gotta trust in it because it's true. I see it, I hear it, I experience it time and time again for myself. And that's a sense of legacy,
Yeah,
right? That gives a sense of
absolutely.
purpose. It gets us out of ourselves. So yeah, just I'm glad you mentioned that part.
Yes, it's wonderful. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being here. I am so grateful. Again, Sarah's website is more soul session. Excuse me. We'll try that again. moresoulsessions.com. More is again Moore because we're with Sarah Moore. And I thank you for being here and all the wisdom that you shared. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. You're a great host and bringing a lot of goodness into this world. So thank you.
Thank you. And you too. And to
Mm.
all of you out there, if anything that we talked about today is something in your mind that's like, okay, I need to start it, start it. I need to do it. Take this moment to say, okay, I'm doing this. I'm either going to call Sarah and work with her. I'm going to call Celia and work with her. I'm going to call somebody. Or maybe it's something I want to do that I don't need to work with anyone. I just need to take the first step. Take the first step and make you the you want to be. Thank you so much for joining us. If this was helpful, please share this out to someone you know that can hear this as well. Leave us a comment. And as always, I wish you days filled with peace, love, tons of laughter. Really is best medicine. Laughter is really fun. You have to have fun. You have to laugh at yourself, laugh at your kids. Take life lightly because you know what? None of us are getting out of here alive, and it should be a good time. So have a good time. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. If this episode was helpful to you, please share it with a friend and leave us a review that will help others. Wonder why kids don't come with a manual? Well, wonder no more, because I wrote you one, and it's just won a wonderful Mom's Choice Award. Go to celiasbooks.com and buy your copy of Raising Happy Toddlers, as well as my children's books. I appreciate you being part of my mission to help 10 million parents stop yelling at their kids. Please be intentional and hug on those kids of yours. See you at the next episode.